Hello, friends. This is part two of my Ask Me Anything. You can check out the part one right up here. Let's go. Dolores asks, when you taught at fitness centers, were you able to get them to invest in props and how? I have not asked for props back when I used to teach at a fitness center. I just used what they had. Um, if the fitness center that you have doesn't have any props, then yes, it would be really, really nice to have something. Um, the the cheapest props I think are the small balls, like in like small balls that you inflate. They're like, how tall are they? I think they're 7 inches in diameter. I believe on OPTP, those are like $6 per ball, especially if you buy in bulk. So that's really not a lot of money. Yoga belts, some fitness studios actually have yoga belts. And so maybe they already have those. If not, those are also available in bulk for pretty affordable, definitely less than $10 per belt. And I know that the belt is definitely not like it's not a very traditional Pilates prop, and it's maybe not as versatile as other ones. But if it's there, definitely use it. That's why I have a lot of experience in using the belt. That's from my time from teaching at a fitness center. And it's definitely, there's some things that you can do really well with belts. So it's worth using them. The other thing that is really cheap is TheraBands, elastic bands. So you can also buy those in a big roll and you just cut them to size. And that is also quite cheap. I think you can get a huge roll for maybe $60. And then you have, I don't want to say any numbers because I'm going to be wrong, but you have at least 20, 30, 40 bands from that. Um, so that's a great option. If in your to answer your question, how did I get them to invest? How did I get a fitness studio to invest in them? First of all, I did never have a conversation with a gym about buying props, but this really all depends for a business owner. Speaking from a business owner's perspective, it really depends on like, is it worth it? And how do you know if it's worth it? If your clients are if they keep coming. So the purchase of a prop is not going to bring somebody to a class. So from a business owner's perspective, it is, I think, a little bit of a fallacy to think, oh, I'm going to buy some foam rollers and now my class is going to be packed. That's not how it works, right? So first, you have to teach a good class without props that people are coming to. Once you have a big group of people who are regularly coming to class, then you have an advantage and you can go to the gym owner and say, look, I have a packed class every single week. My classes are full and I have a dedicated group of people. They come all the time. And I would love to be able to offer some variety because the more variety I can offer, the more interesting it is for them. I know what I'm saying right now because I always preach how variety is not the end all be all. But if you work just in the fitness center, just on the mat for a year, then yes, a prop will make it more interesting. And then people, instead of going somewhere else to seek out something else more exciting, you do have an argument there for investing in props, especially if it's a cheap prop, um, to keep this group of people for the long haul. So that's what I would say. Make sure you're teaching well, make sure you have a lot of people coming to class too. Do your very best to accommodate those people with, their different bodies. And then once you have a success story of your own with this group, then you can go to the studio owner or gym owner and ask if they could invest. And just, I mean, ultimately, the short answer to all of this, which I should have maybe started with, the shorter answer is just ask. So the fact that you asked me, I'm wondering if you've already asked and they said no. Not sure if that's the case. If that's the case, then also another quick solution, honestly, would be to just buy the props yourself. Again, if you buy TheraBands, that sets you back $60 and you can do so much. And then you just bring them to class every time and you take them back home. Again, props, that's like one bag. It's also not a lot to carry for you, right? Balls, they're bulkier. You could deflate them every single time. That might be also a lot of work, right? That adds like at least 10 minutes to like at the beginning, at the end of each class. I don't know how you feel about leaving the props there, right? Just in case some goes missing. If um yeah. But if it's something that's small, you could really just take it with you as you teach. Your clients will appreciate it. And yeah, I hope that one of those things will work out for you. And then actually along those lines, Suzanne is asking a somewhat similar question. She asks, if you had the option of purchasing foam rollers, um, or half rollers as a new prop for my group classes, which one would I get? Is one more versatile than the other? Would you want the full 36-inch or smaller? So I would definitely 100% go with the long 36-inch rollers so that you can lie down on it. Because if you can lie down supine on those rollers, that opens up a variety of exercises. In an ideal world, I would get mostly full rollers, but I would add in a few half rollers for those people who cannot deal with the full rollers when they lie on them. So the thing is, for group classes, you need the option for every person to use the same prop, but then you might have some people who can't deal with the prop, and then you want alternatives. So the half rollers, the long half rollers, I love those. I was considering telling you only get the long half rollers, but the big downside with that is that you can't massage on them, right? Because they don't roll. They don't roll. So you can't do massages. And doing a whole, for instance, you could offer a whole massage class, which I used to do. And I was just talking with another studio owner, and that's what they're going to do as well. That's some people really love that, and some people really need it, and they don't do it at home. So doing a full massage class with no strengthening and stretching in there could be a really, really nice offering. So you need the full roller. So I think the bottom line here is I would go with the full long 36-inch full round rollers. But if you have a little extra money, I would recommend you get a few half rollers because some people will have trouble lying on a moving surface. Some people get dizzy or vertigo, or they're so weak that they can't deal with that. Then what you can do with the half roller is put the flat side down. They still have that ridge for feedback, but they're not wobbling, right? So they're not gonna feel like they um they are doing something different. They're still using a roller, they're just not going to wobble. And you could even flip it around and then they do wobble. And actually, the half rollers wobble more than the full rollers. So you could also use the half roller to challenge your advanced students and have them lie on a half roller with the flat side up because it's actually more wobbly than the full rollers. So again, I would add in 1, 2, 3, depending on how big your group class is, but a few options for the half rollers that could be really, really nice. I always love having options for people with, different abilities. And then if you chose to go just with half rollers, or I should maybe phrase it differently. If you have other massage tools, let's say you have maybe massage balls, or if you have anything else that you could use massages for, then you could potentially go with the flat rollers because that's the only thing, or the half rollers, I should say, right? Because the massage is the only thing that you need the full round roller 4. And then the last thing I want to throw out there is you could consider the spine fitter. The pro of the spine fitter is you can do everything. It is just magnificent. Yes, it's not as much instability as the roller, but it's surprisingly hard to balance on it. And then you have that amazing massage at the same time. The downside of the spine fitter is the price, right? Because compared to a foam roller, they're a lot more expensive. So I would probably, if money is a real concern, I would go with the full rollers. If you have a little bit more money, I would add a few half rollers. If you have a lot of money, then I would go maybe with the spine fitters because they're just phenomenal. That's the short answer. You don't have to have a separate massage class. You can get so much massage going while you do exercises. It's quite wonderful. Moving on. Hope that was helpful. Cher is asking, how does Pilates help someone with plantar fasciitis? So the way that you phrase the question, so you're not asking me what to do for plantar fasciitis, like which Pilates exercises. You're asking me, how does it help someone with Pilates, with plantar fasciitis? So many pathologies or much pain and strain and discomfort that people come to us with is due to muscle imbalances ultimately. And so plantar fasciitis is one of those things where the fascia, so the soft tissue on the sole of the foot gets inflamed because it is too much under tension. So basically, these are your toes, this is your heel, and this is your calf, right? So this fascia here that goes from the toes to the calf, this is under tension because this is very taut. So we need to somehow figure out how to shorten this and take the tension off, right? So basically moving your ankle into plantar flexion will shorten that. As well as lengthening these muscles, because the longer they are, the less tension they have on them, right? And then, as you lengthen one thing, another thing strengthens, and so forth. So you're just trying to create more balance between length, mobility, and strength and stability as well in all the muscles around the ankle and foot and lower leg. Not to forget all the muscles on the side and the rotation. Rotation is always a way to, the rotational muscles are always those that stabilize us on the sagittal plane. So sometimes we forget that we have muscles in 360 degrees around the joint. So I'm thinking, eversion, inversion to correct a potential pronation, supination. Just because, again, if somebody's not in a neutral alignment, then there's always weakness on one side and tightness on the weakness and short muscles on the other side. I hope that answers the question. Also, with any pathologies, is like do nothing that causes pain. If an exercise causes pain, it's the wrong exercise. And then see if you can figure out the opposite. So if plantar flexion for some reason bothers, don't do that, right? Also putting pressure on the heel directly, that's going to hurt. So try and find ways how you can maybe be on the ball of the foot more or have, softer first surface. Just make sure you avoid what causes the pain. All right, I'm moving on. Elvira is asking, I just don't know how to keep a group of people to follow my cueing and not rush through the session. I'm a student, and for sure, I want my classmates to respect me and my teaching skills. Okay, I'm sorry that everybody's ignoring you and rushing ahead. That's so not nice of them. So you're saying you're a student. Does that mean you are a trainee, that you are currently in your Pilates teacher training? So if that is the situation, so actually, the more I'm talking myself through this, the more it sounds like that's what's going on because you said classmates. So it sounds like the other trainees just rush through the session and because they know where you're going and they're not waiting for you to say what you want to say and they're rushing ahead. So if that's the situation, that is the big downside of the way that we do teacher training, where you just teach other trainees. It's super frustrating. I don't enjoy it at all. I don't do it that way. I try and never ever, I mean, I don't necessarily do teacher training, but I try to avoid this at all costs in a teacher training scenario. And I encourage everybody to avoid that because, or like exams, even. I took an exam once from somebody and it was about advanced exercises. And then she basically, when when you ask somebody to teach advanced exercises, you need a student who is able to do those advanced exercises. And that is often other Pilates teachers. But the problem is, the teacher, the person who was teaching, didn't have to say anything. All she said is like, let's do magician. And the student in that scenario already did magician without waiting for any cues. And then you don't know if the teacher knows anything. And you also don't learn anything, right? Because you don't get the feedback from the trainee understanding or not understanding and looking at, like you don't get a real reaction. So the whole scenario is a little fake and artificial and not ideal. If that's any consolation, Elvira, because like maybe, so I'm just thinking, maybe your cueing is slow. Maybe you're looking for the words. For somebody who's new to Pilates, that is a good thing. For somebody who's brand new, who doesn't know the lingo, who doesn't know anything, for them, slow cueing would be exactly what they need. But because you happen to teach other trainees, you don't get that feedback that that's a good thing the way you teach. Okay. And this is just a thought. Um, Again, it really depends on why they're rushing ahead. Maybe they want a better workout. And yeah, I mean, the more I'm thinking about this is all about them and not about you. Right. So again, maybe they want a tougher workout and they just want to move faster. And that's on them. Like that's their issue. It's not your problem. The only thing you can ask yourself as honestly as you can is, what could I do better? Like, do you know why they're rushing ahead? Like, do you in your heart know, yeah, I struggle for words a lot. And there's a lot of moments when I don't know what to say. And then it takes, so if it's that scenario, then you just got to really work on your verbal cueing and make sure that you find the words for a few exercises and you have that really learned by heart, right? So that it comes fast. That's the one thing. So for that, I would recommend start with one sequence, learn this one sequence, which is like 10 to 15 exercises, learn that absolutely well before trying to teach other repertoire, other exercises. Because if you try to learn everything at once, you don't really know nothing well. So it's better to learn 10 exercises really well, learn to teach those really well, teach them, and then they'll be with you, right? um, and then increase your repertoire over time. And if there's anything else that I'm not thinking about right now that you say like, yeah, they're doing it because of that, then just see, is this on them or is this on you, right? Is this something, is it just their ego, whatever, I don't know. Or is there actually, a lack of some teaching skill that you can work on? And then give yourself some grace and practice, 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 practice with somebody else, not with those people. Because that's important too, because then you might get feedback from other people that they really like the way you teach. And I think that's a really good experience, important experience to have, is that reinforcement of like, yes, this is good. This is fine. I just teach differently. Some people are group teachers and some people are private teachers. Like in terms of, I know we're supposed to be able to do both, But some people just enjoy working with one-on-ones much better. And when you work one-on-one, it's a completely different way of teaching than when you teach a class. So maybe you are a one-on-one teacher. Maybe this is where you shine, and this is where you're gonna end up once you've made it through this awkward, terrible phase of teacher training, which can be so frustrating, right? Um, so I just really want to encourage you not to take their behavior as a judgment of your teaching skills, because again, you have your strengths, and those might, maybe they're not made for group classes, or maybe you just need to practice a little bit better, more. If you're passionate about group classes, then there's probably something for you to learn. But if you don't care about group classes, maybe that's your sign to just focus on the one-on-ones and just sort of close your eyes and make it through and get it over with. And once you've graduated, you can chill and you can do what you're really good at, and then you'll have a great Pilates career. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. I hope that makes sense. Christina, I'm a member and have recently begun training clients with scoliosis. Many are 70 years old and above. They're going through Schroth exercises with their PTs, physical therapists. I was wondering what you feel is best for flexion and extension, lateral flexion, and I think to avoid these, and rotational moves. I appreciate any extension you may provide. Thank you. Cool, cool, cool. So, I had a very similar question, two maybe even similar questions in the first part of this Ask Me Anything. So check that out, because it's also going to be helpful. But basically, so I took a 3-day training on Pilates for scoliosis that was taught by somebody who's teaching the Schroth method. And so my guidelines come from that knowledge, because I have seen contradictory information. So, and I can't speak to that. For me, these guidelines that I learned via Schroth, I'm not Schroth trained, but the guidelines that I learned are basically keep them in neutral. That's the short answer. As with any time that you restrict somebody's movement repertoire in Pilates, you have to realize that they will move their spine in real life. And if we're not somehow preparing them for real life, then we're doing them a disservice. So we do need to move their spine, but it needs to be a progression from them finding neutral. So if they're already doing Schroth with their PTs, they probably are currently working on finding neutral, right? The thing about scoliosis is they are never in neutral. That is, I think, the big light bulb moment that I had in that training that I took, was they're never in neutral. So let's not move them out of neutral into lateral flexion, rotation, extension, flexion, because then they're going to be even more bent awkwardly. Also, because of the three-dimensionality of the curve, sometimes we're thinking, you probably know this, but sometimes we're thinking of scoliosis just of a lateral curve, but there's rotation built into that curve. So because of that three-dimensionality of the curve, anytime you move anything, you unintentionally move another part of the spine, and then it might become too tight. So that's why you want to keep them in neutral. Once they know how to stay neutral and how to elongate is also the key with scoliosis, then you can add small range of motion into all other ranges of motion, because again, they are going to turn around in their car and grab something from the back seat. They will pick something up. When you grab and pull something, there's always rotation. Reflection is always these combination spine movements. They do happen in real life. So you can do some of it, but while they're moving in any direction, they need to stay elongated. So when you do a great option is to do oblique flat back. So you go into rotation and then you go back and then you come up, right? Or you go into rotation and then round back flexion as you rotate and come back up, but never collapsing the spine, always working against gravity or against the compression of the spine. Small ranges of motion, no end range. Do never ever do like mermaid on the reformer, on the table in the tower, where you use external leverage to get you deeper into the twist. That is what we don't do. No end range of motion and no like leverage, stretch, and range of motion. But we do want to move, but we want to move with our own strength. So every time you move in a certain direction, your muscles or the client's muscles guide them into this. So they build the strength into the movement instead of being pushed passively into the movement. I hope that makes sense. And then as you work on those small ranges of motion, make sure that they're supported by muscle so that somebody's not cheating as they do this, and use compensation patterns. And then there will be a very big difference between the two sides. And then depending on the exercise, it's going to be different in every single exercise, but depending on the exercise, one side will be the sort of easy side, probably, and the other side will be the harder side. And then you can do the harder side a little bit more because that's where you can create a little bit more balance. But again, it's different from somebody who doesn't have scoliosis, where it's just the muscular imbalance. With somebody with scoliosis, it's not just the muscular imbalance, but the muscle imbalance is a result of the bone difference, and you cannot change the bone difference because the actual bones have changed shape. Okay. But then because of this perpetual imbalance in the body gets even weaker. And so and then the curves get worse because of that. So the goal out of it is muscular activity, and holding exercises, planks, stuff like that is a great way to not move the spine and build strength, right? I see so much with scoliosis. A lot of people focus so much on stretching the tight areas, but that's not going to get you anywhere. It's just gonna, yes, you stretch the tight area, but at the same time, you compress an area that was already tight, somewhere else because of the scoliosis, and you're not getting out of the cycle because the body only feels better with muscle strength. Muscle strength is the solution to everything. Balanced muscle strength, right? Too tight is not good. Balanced muscle development is the solution to every problem in the body, musculoskeletal. What's hard, that's the easy answer. The hard thing is to figure out, to watch closely and see and detect and assess and find the muscles that are weak and make those work, and find the muscles that are short and make those lengthen instead of just randomly doing something. I hope that helps. I had a thought there somewhere, but it slipped my mind as I was talking. But I feel good. I think that is a good start for you. Okay, moving on to Sarah. Sarah's asking, in prone extension exercises such as breaststroke or a dart, why do some people's feet come off the ground? Very quick question. It is because of a lack of core control in prone or quadruped. So when you lie prone, gravity pulls your belly down. The lumbar spine has a bias towards, well, it has, yes, a bias towards extension, right? It has a natural lordosis, meaning that so here's my lumbar spine, and gravity pushes down. And then if you don't hold the front, the abdominal wall up strongly against it, you're just letting that go, right? So then we're immediately falling into extension. And even just lying prone is already an extension bias. So for most people, because of the shortness of most people's hip flexors and shoulders, most people, when they lie prone, they are already in extension. And then once we start lifting the legs, because most people have very poor hip extension and also hip disassociation, because so basically they cannot extend the legs, the hips, separately from the spine. So as they lift the legs, the whole pelvis tips forward into an anterior pelvic tilt because the lumbar spine is what moves. So that moves first, and then the legs come up because of that posterior chain, because the muscles in the back of the body are connected. So how do you get out of this? Is to work on core control in prone. So really focus on teaching how to keep the abdominal walls active, not flexing, but active, and reducing the range of motion. So for instance, doing your leg lifts on a box or on a ball. So elevating your torso, legs lower, because now you can work towards neutral. I hope the image makes sense. So now I'm starting in flexion, I'm working towards neutral instead of starting in neutral if I'm on the mat and going into extension and then collapsing the lumbar spine. Normal range of motion for hip extension is only 15, 16, 18 degrees, somewhere along that. So that's very little. Like look up how much 18 degrees, it's barely nothing. So people who lift their legs really high, the lumbar spine must react. I'm not saying that in real life it doesn't do that. In real life, there's always sort of a combination of extension and lumbar extension, so hip extension and lumbar extension. But in order to maximize or strengthen your hamstrings and glutes, for instance, that's why we need to isolate it and work on the core control at the same time. Okay, I hope that was not too confusing. So basically, it is very normal. It is the most common mistake, I would say, in prone exercises. The solution, if you have the props available, is to lift the torso up higher than the legs so people can have just an easier time with that. In stretching the thighs a lot. So I would do, if you don't have the props and you're in a mat class situation, do a thigh stretch, basically grabbing your foot behind you. Do a thigh stretch before you do dart or any of those other exercises, because the longer the muscles on the front of the leg and hip are, the better people will be at lifting without collapsing the lumbar spine. Okay, I'll leave it at that. And then I have one more question from Robert, and I have honestly have a hard time understanding the question, but I'll do my best. So Robert says, I want to understand weight-bearing exercises on the reformer for folks over 65. I'm not interested in increasing strength, just weight-bearing, just maintaining, not building strength. Some articles seem to imply Pilates is not weight-bearing. So, yeah, I have trouble understanding the question. So basically, I guess maybe you're saying you're not interested in building strength in terms of push-ups. You're not building up to push-ups. You're not building up to weightlifting and any kind of major strength building stuff for the upper body. You just want to maintain, and I'm assuming that just means I want to be able to carry weight on my arms. And then you're mentioning reformer. So you're not mentioning the wrists, which is typically the biggest issue, is the wrist pain. So there are options where you can really just, instead of long stretch, you can put your elbows on the foot bar. There are also ways how you can put the box over the platform, standing platform on the front of the reformer somehow, so you can have your elbows on the box. You can also spin it around, put the box over just in front of the shoulder rest or over the shoulder rest, and have the elbows there and your feet either on the foot bar or on the frame. The load changes, right? It's the other direction. You can even, instead of long stretch, you can even put your elbows onto the platform. So there is a bunch of ways how you can avoid the wrist issues. But in terms of weight bearing, how do you improve weight bearing would be basically to weight bear, right? So we get better at what we practice. So in order to maintain the ability to weight bear on your upper extremities, you just do that, right? So I would just do as many exercises as people can stand, like planks, side planks, back planks, planks from all directions, to improve that. And if you want to reduce the load, planks on your knees, You can have a large, if you have a large ball available, you can do a plank or a front support there, which supports your body weight, so it's not so hard. But you're asking reformer. Sorry, I'm getting off track. And really on the reformer, and then your quadruped, you're kneeling abdominals facing front, you're kneeling abdominals facing back. Yeah, I hope that was helpful. If you have any further questions, if I misunderstood or whatever, and for all of you guys, drop it into the comments below, and then I can give you the right answer that you were looking for. All right, take care, guys.